found a podcast amongst your travels, hosted in a dark place with no sun. There are two men with the same name and one with a different one. Oh, they talk about all the dungeon stuff. They talk about all the dungeon things. They talk about every single little thing inside their dungeon scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Game Masters Under Dark, where two game masters this week are getting together to talk to you about ability scores. As always, I am one of your hosts, Will, joined as always by Matt R. Matt, how you doing this week?
I saw. You almost said your host.
I did. I almost did.
This is your house. Okay.
It's like so. I don't know because I'm always doing it. It was just in my head. I caught myself because I'm not.
Hola. I am also a host. I bring the food.
I was gonna say I've been eating off camera, like before we started recording, eating Chex Mix. So this week we are going to be continuing our series on discussing ability scores, what kind of checks they're used for, give you some examples of kind of what the book says to use them for, and some other examples of other ways you can use them. And this week we're going over two of the biggest ones, actually probably two of the biggest ones, with dexterity and charisma. So
hot stuff. I use those things pretty much every session. Well, at least one of them.
All the time. So I'm just going to read like we're going to start with dexterity. And I'm just going to read like the definition from the book. A dexterity check can model any attempt to move nimbly, quickly, or quietly, or to keep from falling on tricky footing. The acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth skills reflect aptitude in certain kinds of dexterity checks. So we're going to get into that a little more here in a second, but obviously these are things that require like fast hands, quick,
nimble.
Being able to move quickly.
Making sure the fingers stay nice and stretched.
Yep.
Like muscles would be in strength.
Right. No, that's actually a perfect example. Stealth, sleight of hand, obviously you're trying to be quick. I think the best example I can think of is in the second Ninja Turtles movie where they have to pull the bells off of the no, hold on, listen.
Go straight to Ninja Turtles.
I do, because in the second movie they have to pull these bells off of a mannequin without making any noise. And that is like a sleight of hand trick.
That's true.
See,
I know when I think sleight of hand, my mind goes straight to David Copperfield, the illusionist. Magic. But David Copperfield does not do magic. He's an illusionist. He does illusions. Sleight of hand. That's what he does.
Yeah.
And I got the specific definition for sleight of hand up. Will?
Yeah, go for it.
Got it. It's very short. It says manual dexterity. So we're using keywords here. Typically in performing tricks. And then the definition, or not the definition, but used in a sentence, a nifty gift of sleight of hand got the ashtray into the correct position.
Okay. I don't know.
A nifty bit of sleight of hand got the ashtray into the correct position.
Well, that's an old school reference, is what that is.
Right.
So to build on that, though, I am gonna go with the book, some examples from the book. It doesn't mention manual trickery or, oh man, I always forget what this word means. Thank you. Oh yeah, legerdemain. Or
what does that mean?
That's so like trying to cast a spell without being seen.
Oh. Okay. I usually just do. Is that dexterity? Yeah. I mean, I haven't really come in contact with that too much.
I've used it. I've seen it used a couple of times, especially like in like the actual plays from like Dimension 20, like a lot of what Brennan does.
Mm-hmm.
He has a lot of times where like the Unsleeping City, because they're in like New York with a lot of people. So when they try to cast, he's like, okay, sleight of hand to see if you get away with doing it without people seeing you.
That makes sense. Trying to hide things.
Yeah. But also,
sorry, I got my graphs back here with my definitions.
Yeah, for
This is
those
what
just listening,
I
Matt,
roll back to look at.
yeah, for those just listening, Matt has like a board behind him that has a lot of information. There's several different sheets, but um yeah, that's what he was referring to. But it also says planting something on someone or concealing an object on your person. um I know we I think we did that one time we were in a tavern,
Yeah.
and I was like, do you want, you're like, yeah, I was steal something. And then I was like, sleight of hand, I stole it. And then I was like, I don't need this. And I was like, I just put it back. And so like,
I've also seen it used in the same kind of context. I've seen it used in maybe you go into like a masquerade, and since we all know the world of D&D, it's very easy to slip weapons in. But the NPCs also know the world of D&D. So at the front door, they'll ask, "Put your weapons down. No weapons allowed in here." And that's when you have like, "I want to hold on to a dagger," and then sleight of hand to get it through security.
right, yeah, that um or deception, yeah, that which is deception
more
is
like
it's
you're
charisma, like talking your way out of it.
lying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
It's not
but
a dagger. It's a
yeah,
fine knife. It's an ornament for my
yeah.
outfit.
Yeah, I mean, hey, well, and I only brought that up because we're talking about both tonight,
Uh-huh.
but I've seen. I mean, if as we often talk in our games when we play, like, how would that work? And if we can convince each other, like, well, this is how I would do it, it's like, okay, go for it. So,
Mhm.
I don't think you could.
And
You
maybe
could.
you have a better charisma than dexterity. So
Yeah,
maybe you pull out a dagger and then somebody catches you putting it back in your pocket, and you can be like, "It's just a letter opener."
yeah,
That's a tool.
exactly. So, yeah, that's a great. Yeah, so that's a great example of interchanging, like, same circumstance, but depending on how your character's built.
Yeah.
Um, and I will say that most characters I've seen that we've built, especially or other videos, a lot of times characters are proficient in one or the other. Not always, but a lot of them you're either dexterous or you have
Well,
charisma.
yeah, but that's because those are, like I said, hot ones. Hot
Right,
ones. So usually you put your biggest one in one of the two if you're going for
right.
that kind of build. But then your other one, I don't know. If I'm
Oh,
making a charisma character, yeah, I'll put like the 18 there. 18. I'll put a high number there. And then depending on what my character is, if I'm making charisma one, sometimes I want to focus on constitution. So sometimes my dexterity is my dump stat.
yeah, and so yeah, but and that does happen. Like I said, totally depends on your build. But that's what I said. Usually, you're usually good at one of these two things. But
Yeah.
it is fun sometimes when you're like, I want to do this, and your DM is like, no, like, you make this check. And sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not. It depends on the situation. But yeah, sleight of hand is, we don't use it a ton, but we also don't. Our characters
You
are
guys
typically.
don't make sneaky characters in your game.
I made one in our other game where I'm jumping through windows and
Oh yeah.
but that's a tale
Oh,
for
that's
another
true. That's
day.
like your first like detective character for
It
me,
is.
at least.
And I went full detective on that.
Mm.
But another thing, keeping up with dexterity, we talked a little bit about this last time because we talked about strength and athletics, excuse me, is acrobatics. So again, we'll kind of go over it. Like, it's your attempt to stay on your feet in a tricky situation, like bouncing on a tightrope. If anybody has watched oh my god, I just forgot the name of the show on Dimension 20, but where they're high school students, like the very first episode, they're all trying to like jump on cafeteria tables, and he's like, do an acrobatics check, and like all of them, like almost half the group failed and like fell on their faces because they were trying to like jump on tables in the middle of combat. So while jumping is typically a strength thing, they were just doing it to do it. He was like, no, like, I want to, he made him do acrobatics because they were trying to show off, basically.
Acrobatics means spectacular gymnastic feats,
Right.
specifically.
Yeah.
The
So
sentence it's used in
Oh, are we doing
is
spelling bee here?
she sealed the title with a powerful display of acrobatics and tumbling. Boom. That one makes a lot more sense. It's not about ashtray.
Right. No 1980s references here.
Though there is a second definition to acrobatics, which is still fits what we're talking about. Actions or procedures characterized by considerable flair or mental agility.
Yeah.
Mental agility is interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if, I don't want to get too much into that one.
You could get into it, like if you're a player and you're just like, I'm about to perform some mental acrobatic.
Yeah, I mean,
because thinking about an encounter though, imagine you're inside. Hear me out. You are now inside someone else's head, carrying out an encounter that hurts you physically based on your actions. So yeah, it's already a high concept encounter.
yeah.
The idea would be like you yourself are physically manifested within somebody else's mind. You could roll acrobatics for mental agility.
You know what? I don't know if that's what that means, but we'll go with it. I mean,
like, I am gonna think faster, so he cannot get me inside his own mind.
Well, and I think that definition actually, I don't know if we talked about this too much last time, but that would be a good distinction between a skill check and an ability check.
Yeah.
So a skill like acrobatics, I feel like that would be jumping on the table or walking a tightrope, but something like maybe you instead of like a concentration check, like maybe depending on the rules you play, like a concussion, like your head is not in the right space for mental wherewithal. You have to make that, the mental agility, you have to make that dexterity check. That's more of an ability at that point, because now you're trying to stay focused when, as somebody who's had multiple concussions, that's not easy to do.
What you would have them roll if they're like got hit so many times or something?
I think we don't play rules like that, so I wouldn't say. I could also make a case though for like wisdom in a case like that, because that's street smarts. So like there could be something made to be like, oh, I can balance things out in my head, because technically wisdom and intelligence are like mental things on their own. So I can make the case for either one. I think it, again, probably depends on the character I'm playing and how I'm trying to convince my DM to let me pass the check. So like that's why I said I think like the mental dexterity thing is kind of a little tougher. Mostly I think also because there's not really any rules for that in D&D. Like there's not scenarios typically where that would be applicable. I
think there is, but we're not the right people to confirm that.
There could be that.
H is he knows.
Well, even like the intellect devourer, which is a monster that I have used when we did Waterdeep Dragon Heist. It makes you, it's either wisdom or intelligence. It's been a while since I've used it, but it makes you make that check, and if you fail, like you're for lack of a better phrase, like you're brain dead, like you cannot function. Your character's not dead, but you literally can't think. You have a blank slate. And I think I want to say that's wisdom, but it could be wisdom or intelligence. So that's why I don't know if I would use dexterity for that. But again, if you gave me a convincing enough argument, I wouldn't tell you no.
I would work really hard to convince you.
So sorry, buddy, I'm super dehydrated. I was out in the sun for a while today. So acrobatics is one. Again, I think that's also campaign dependent. A lot of times I know, like, I don't set up a lot of things where it's like tightrope walking or ice and stuff. So
that's back to what I had mentioned off camera a while ago. When I'm building an encounter, I like to think about what's around you. And very much so, if people aren't using acrobatics very often, it usually means they don't know what surround them. So what can they do? They don't know. And so like you don't know if you can tightrope walk on anything if you don't know there's a rope there, you know?
Yeah, and I know again wasn't off camera thing, but that's why I told you guys know like I love maps
Mhm.
because I am very much a visual learner.
Yeah. And so
So
like not
so
everybody has maps though. So sometimes
yeah,
it's like falls back on the DM being like, if you if somebody builds a character, then they're supposed to be like very acrobatic. As a DM, kind of play into that. Just
yeah,
mention things here and there. Be like, oh, and there's a stack of barrels or something. Just
yeah,
like flavor up your encounter, so you have those instances where people are just like, yes, I can use that stack of
yeah. They
barrels.
have the option for it.
Right? You
Yeah,
knock
and
over the stack of barrels, suddenly it becomes like reflex saves. Everybody starts making reflex saves as they have
yeah.
to
You,
watch out for the barrels.
you try to climb, you roll a nat one, the barrels start falling down. Every,
Right.
everybody.
I mean, that could be beneficial to you as like maybe you knock it over towards the enemy. You
Yeah,
are the
yeah.
Donkey Kong in this scenario.
Right. The original Donkey Kong. So yeah, but yeah, and like you said, yeah, everybody doesn't have maps, and I think um as a great example, with the live, with the, and I call it live, it's not, but the actual play series, you see where when we do things encounter wise, I'm like, is there this? Is there that? Is there
Yeah.
this? Because you don't use a lot of maps, and there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like at that point, it's on me as a player to get the information I need.
Yeah.
And
If I
once,
don't, as a DM, if I don't mention anything and the players are like, is this around? And then I usually say yes, unless it's like something ridiculous. Like, is there a stack of gold just sitting around? No, there's not.
no, right. No, you're in a hallway. Why would there be gold?
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Is the
and
person we're looking for right around the corner? No, look, just turn the corner.
yeah, so and I'm very much different in that regard. Like I say, it's just because of the type of DMs we are.
Mhm.
Like I Google all kinds of different maps. I obviously we I the maps that have people make on different websites. I try to get the ones that have their names in it so we can do like
Yeah.
when I use them, I can do shout outs because I'm not trying to steal anybody's stuff because there are people infinitely better at this than I am at map making. But yeah, so again, that's just more of like I like you guys to be able to see what's going on,
Yeah. And
and
we
then if
can
they're
respond well if we
yeah,
know what's there. And that goes for like all the checks too.
yeah,
But like I know specifically acrobatics is one that you do need some details to be able to pull off original ideas. The When I say original ideas, I mean like it's not the DM saying, okay, roll for acrobatics. It's you being like, can I do this? Because I know this information. And then the DM will be like, yeah, that'll be an acrobatics check.
exactly, yeah. So yeah, I think that's all little tangential we got a little bit there, but in the end, yeah, like it's up to you as a player.
Acrobatics is it's a weird one.
It is but like you said, I think that's where communication between DMs and players come in. We talk about this I think every week. um that like that's super important. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. Like I said, I know I know a lot of times at the end of sessions I'm like, I'm sorry I asked so many questions, but for me I need to know some of that information to be able to function. So
Yeah, don't be
uh,
afraid to ask questions.
yeah, exactly. One of the last big checks, though, skill checks for dexterity, is the stealth, which I think we use
I
quite a
don't think
bit.
we need to go into that one as
Yeah,
often.
I was gonna say,
Stealth is very obvious.
yeah, rogues use it a lot. I think we use it even when we don't build stealthy characters. I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to be quiet, and no, nat
Yeah.
one, and now you make a lot of noise. Yeah,
Stealth is simply noise and visibility. That's what they focus on. If you want to try to stop either of the two from being as observant, then you roll for stealth. That's it.
yeah, absolutely. So sorry, I
Mhm.
got caught eating some Chex Mix. So yeah, stealth we're not gonna get into too much, like you said.
We're gonna get our first comment is gonna be in the stealth section. Be like, I need more information.
A whole video on stealth.
Like, okay, the
But
audience demands it.
but there are some other dexterity checks that are listed here, which some of these I think we kind of sort of picked on,
Other
but,
ones, what?
so
It's
like
not on my list.
right, control a heavily laden cart on a steep descent.
Oh, these are
Never thought about
specific examples.
Yeah, not general. Here's one that actually can work with tool proficiencies, which there's more info in, I think it's Xanathar's or Tasha's. But picking a lock,
I was gonna guess.
yep, picking a lock,
Alright.
disabling a trap as well. That's part of the expanded rules on using your tools for those things.
That was my first encounter with dexterity. When I first started playing D&D,
Mhm.
it literally was like, well, we got hit by a trap. Then I was like, okay, don't want to do that again. How do I not get hit by a trap? And they're like, well, you got to roll for dexterity to see if there's a trap around. I didn't see anything. I rolled badly, but I was like, that was my first dexterity roll.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, and so but those two things specifically I know are like part of an expanded rules thing. They give you like specific DCs to hit for the
Mhm.
to do that. So that's kind of nice.
Dexterity. No, never mind. I was like
Mm.
thinking of wisdom, my favorite one to use, but we're
Yeah,
not there yet.
nope, no.
It's
And
almost like
charisma is
made
my
it.
favorite. So we'll be getting to that one in a minute. But even like wriggling for your bonds, securely tying up a prisoner. I had you guys do that in my campaign, where I
Oh
made you
yeah,
guys.
we
I
did.
was like, do a
We
dexterity
roped
check.
some
See how you tie a rope.
fellows,
Yep.
roped them up. I think we roped them up really well.
Yeah, I think you guys did. It's been a
It's
while.
almost like we were like professionals.
Yeah, I think it was. And again, I think that's another one that's in the expanded rules.
Not a professional, just super into rope play. That's my character.
Wrong podcast.
This is the right podcast. We are Game Masters Underdark.
Right. Ugh.
Will just doesn't like it.
You know what? I'm gonna abstain from.
Nobody's rolled a nat 20 on you for rope play. That's what it is. They rolled nat 1. You got rope burn.
Ow! Stop!
You're like, that's it. No
I'm
more
done.
of this.
Yep, not one on rope play. Oh God. Some other things that Dix. I want to move on now. Some other things that dexterity is used for. Attack rolls and damage for like slings and longbows. Also, a lot of times dexterity will be used if you're playing a monk and you do your unarmored attack or your fist attacks. It lets you use dexterity instead of strength. That's specifically for the monk, though.
That's super cool. It's very useful.
Yes, I know that because I think I fiddled with like 4 different monk builds at this point. Like, I'm super familiar with that mechanic.
They're all about being fast.
Yes.
So dexterity, you can equate that to just how fast you are.
Yep. Armor class. That's another one, depending on the armor you wear. Like light armor, medium armor. Your armor class is affected by your dexterity in that point, or in that case, excuse me. And last, but certainly not least, probably the most important thing dexterity is used for, initiative.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. So when you're building your characters, again, I wouldn't say like you sink everything into dexterity specifically for initiative.
Yeah, I never care about initiative.
Yeah,
I got negative ones on 2 current characters.
Yeah, that's true. And I think right now my mine's a +2, so, and I got a +4 to initiative because of racial bonuses and stuff. So yeah, I'm very much like I need to go first.
Yeah,
but
if you're like a planner and you like feel like you want to go first, yeah, you can focus on your initiative. But like it's also very easy to just miss and be like, oh, I got a really cool character. Then you look at your initiative and you're like, they're going last all the time.
Yeah, well, and part of it is I've played a lot of support characters, even this current character. Ozat, my Harangon, is a cleric. I'm a support character, so for me being able to go first and like, here's some spells to buff my teammates, that's kind of how I built the character with that in mind. But yeah, initiative, obviously, who goes in what order, that's super important, even for encounters, you know, the DMs, if you look at any of your monsters you're going to use, they all tell you like a plus whatever to initiative.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's important. It's for every single character, monster, what have you. So dexterity
What's next?
kind of got a lot. Kind of got a lot. There's also a
So,
specific mention of hiding.
I
I'm not
go
gonna
with
get too
stealth though.
that, yeah, that's a stealth roll. But that can also I don't want to get too bogged down in this. A lot of that can also have to do with the cover that's available. That's when you get into cover rules like half,
We
3/4,
and we
full.
just talked about like the DM or player. The DM got to set the scene, or the player's got to ask questions.
Yeah,
Yeah, because there's a whole mechanic for cover.
yeah, exactly. So um it's I think it's important if you're a newer DM and you're listening or watching, I wouldn't stress it.
Yeah,
um
just say like there's the simple, yeah, you got cover, you're good, and don't worry about the cover mechanic. Or if you are playing like maybe you want to be a little bit more detailed about it. There is a cover mechanic where like if somebody still shoots a spell at you, how much does that cover negate that spell?
yeah, there's a whole thing. It's in the basic rules as well as the
Yeah,
like DMG if you have it. So
and it's Googleable. Googleable.
Googleable.
Yep, we both said it correctly.
Yeah, it took a minute. I was Googleable. So yeah, so dexterity is super important. We'll just leave it at that with everything. And so the next thing, my personal favorite ability, charisma.
Oh wow,
Um,
jazz hands and oh my man.
I
Wow, he
love it.
busted out the jazz hands for the listeners.
I did. Yeah, I absolutely love charisma. I think I play high charisma characters most of the time, or at least I rarely have a negative. I'll leave it like I'm at least
You gotta
even.
have something in there. That's your
Yeah,
go-to.
it is. I often play characters who I think my paladin had high charisma.
I mean,
I
they
play
got
high
to. The
I play
paladin
high
got to.
but I play high charisma characters.
Yeah,
I love the showmanship of it. Um,
nothing wrong
it's
with that.
so oddly enough, I haven't played like a bard yet, which I should probably look into.
Bard
Um,
is like, I feel like Bard is a lot of people would think of charisma, high charisma, Bard, right? But there's
yeah,
oh, there's a lot of classes nowadays that you just put in charisma. I got a high charisma barbarian. Did we talk about that yet? We have
no,
not
and
talked about that yet.
but I think this is the perfect time to.
Yep.
And I don't, and I mean, yeah. So you can build your characters however you want.
Mhm.
I was more speaking the typical, you know, if you're looking for the face of the group, as they say,
Yeah.
the bard is the common one. And for those of you watching, I just realized I know it looks weird. I have a webcam on one screen and Matt's on the other. That's why I'm looking.
They don't care,
I don't
Will.
know.
They don't care.
Some people do.
You can say, who cares? Who out there cares? Dang.
I'm gonna put up a poll. Who cares? And that's
Nobody
what I'll say.
cares. All that they care about is our juicy, luscious information. I know you're making a weird face, but you know, our information is juicy.
Well, after
Luscious. I was looking for a better word.
well,
Succulent.
no, see, after rope play, I'm just a little nervous. That's all. I don't want to get
On
burned
edge.
again.
He doesn't know where I'm gonna go next.
Right? He's
Go
wild.
any direction.
So
I'm acrobating on that thin line.
right. Roll for acrobatics. So charisma, as we've kind of alluded to, charisma check might arise when you try to influence or entertain others, when you try to make an impression or tell a convincing lie, which we kind of mentioned earlier, or when you're navigating a tricky social situation. The big abilities skill checks for this are deception, intimidation, performance, and persuasion. So those are the specific skills that cover charisma.
Can we talk about intimidation first?
Oh yeah, go by all means.
Because I feel like that's an easy one.
Yeah,
That's
go
an easy
for
one.
it.
Like, I mean, you think intimidation. Like you're not intimidated because that's not intimidating, but like, you know, simply screaming at somebody could be intimidation, you know? Like that I feel like when people are in a stuck, maybe like an interrogation setting or something like that, intimidation is super easy to come to, and it simply comes out as I'm gonna kill you, that kind of thing. And I don't feel like that's utilizing intimidation to the best of its ability when it specifically when it comes to charisma. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think I know I use intimidation quite a bit with Lelmir, my paladin, where
Mhm.
I would like kind of drill instructor, like get in people's faces, and I'm like, I don't know who you think you're talking to, because I feel like that's more of a charisma type of move
Yeah.
than, yeah, could I yell and battle cry? We'll call it like a barbarian. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
very much intimidating. But I think you can
I
get away with that if that's how your character's built.
I love the
So
idea of using intimidation in a very non well threatening still, but a very non aggressive tone. And so like imagine you're like in a debate with somebody and then you like look over at them and you just bring up like I know about your tax fraud. And then I would roll for intimidation and be like, okay, now that person is visibly shook.
yeah,
And
uh,
so like that kind of stuff, I feel like intimidation just kind of gets thrown into like, oh, I know what that is. Easy. But like there's so many different uh scenarios in which intimidation can be used where a lot of people just use like simple persuasion or charisma. And
well,
like intimidation specifically, if you put little checks into intimidation specifically, I think that would benefit people a little bit more.
Well, and I was gonna add to that, and you hit the nail on the head. I think what makes it difficult from a role play perspective is when you do something like intimidation, like your tax fraud example,
Mhm.
that could be a deception or a persuasion check. It could be
I
any one
mean,
of the three,
yeah,
depending on how your how when I said how your character was built, but I meant how you're role playing your character.
yeah,
Because if like I've got my right now, I just happen to have Ozot, my Harangon cleric's character sheet up, and I get a +2 in deception, but a +0 in intimidation and a +2 in persuasion. So in
yeah,
my
yeah.
case, because
You
of
want
the
to use the other
bonuses, yeah, I would use one of the others. Or I might try to intimidate because
because you
that,
angry.
yeah, I'm on edge. I'm aggro, bro. Like, and so it is situation dependent. I think it's a
Yeah,
role play thing.
and I
But
do like what you brought up, and I think we should mention it, is if you don't have anything in a check, does not mean you cannot use it.
absolutely,
I mean, you can still roll very positively. It'd be pretty good. I mean, if
yeah,
at like the beginning levels, you might have maybe a -1 in something. So if anything, you have a at the best worst, you have a 19.
yeah,
You know, and so like you saying, oh, I don't have anything in intimidation, so I might go with deception. But like if your character is like driven to be intimidating in the very moment, roll for intimidation. You might actually fare
yeah,
well.
yeah. I think that's as a new player, I know I was super intimidated by the idea of like, I have a negative, I don't want to do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But as I've played more, um, I think even the other day I was like, hey, can I? It might have been our last session we played or a couple before that. I was like, hey, can I make an athletics check to see if I can do that? I think we were climbing the tree. That's what we were doing.
Mhm.
And you were like, yeah, that's an athletics check because I'm climbing something. I have a -1, but I think I rolled a like 18 or 17, and I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, cool. I climbed the tree.
Boom.
Like you said, yeah, we're level I think 2 or 3 at the time, but I wasn't gonna let that bother me. Like
You
I
weren't going to
needed,
let that tree stand in your way.
yeah, like I needed to climb the tree to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did it. And then I was like, I'm gonna jump from the tree. And you're like, that's acrobatics. But I wasn't as
Yeah.
worried about that because I think I had a +2. And I think
Yeah.
so I was
And you
like,
nailed that one too.
yeah, I got both. So it was if it was in a movie, it would have looked really cool. Like you just see me climbing a tree and then assassinating someone. But yeah, so definitely I think that's a good like little aside. Just because
Mhm.
you have a negative as a player, don't let that bother you. It's tough.
Yeah.
But because
Especially, I
in
mean,
your mind,
the negative connotation is instilled in all of us. And so like you see a negative there, you're like, I'm not gonna do it because I'm gonna do bad. But like that's
Yeah.
not the case.
No, and I love it. Again, this is why I like probably because I like to think I'm a high charisma individual in real life. I think it's a great role playing opportunity. Okay, so you need to be intimidating, and you roll on that one. Hey,
You do that roar that I just did earlier.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or you know the you see it in movies, or I do it when I get excited. Stutter. Well, you and like because you're
You sound
nervous, you
like
don't know what
scared
to say.
yourself.
Yeah, but you were trying to be intimidating. But how many times do you see in a movie where somebody tries to be intimidating and then like the bully gets in their face and they're like, "Oh no, bad idea." Like you know, it's a trope, but it you know for the purposes of this, it works. So you're trying to be intimidating, and now all of a sudden, you're just not.
Yeah, that's a cool thing to bring up. A lot of the other checks, if you fail, that's kind of bad. That's something bad's about to happen. If you try to jump over a cliff with the dexterity, you fail. Uh-oh, that's real bad. But if you fail a charisma check, usually that just means you flubbed up. You flubbed.
Awkward
Didn't
social
yeah,
interaction.
you didn't die. That's I
Hopefully.
mean, I'm sure there's scenarios where like, yeah, if you mess up, this will kill us, but that's not all, that's usually not the case. And so if you just mess up, it's maybe you make the wrong person angry or something else, but like you just role play it out, maybe you can escape still.
Yeah, I mean, I know you did it in I keep bringing up my campaign, but you did it against a guy who should have killed you. But you kept like, I want to do this, and I was like, all right, persuasion.
Mhm.
Okay, this, and I don't remember all the checks you made. I think most of them were persuasion, but eventually you rolled high enough that you beat him.
Mhm.
And it was just like,
Persuasion, baby.
yeah. And so,
Yeah, it was persuasion. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, and I know I've seen this a lot on other posts where DMs are like, "Oh, I only let him try like once or twice and I'm done." But I was like, "You were being super convincing. I didn't see a reason to stop you. Plus, I wasn't trying to kill you. I think if it was an encounter where I was trying to kill you,
And I
I
think
probably would have stopped at one or two. But
when it comes to like how many times you can do it within the thing, I think within like an encounter of a social encounter, I think those parameters can change depending on like what exactly are you rolling persuasion on, you know, like because you can roll deception multiple times within a social encounter,
Mhm.
but being deceptive about different things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And intimidation is the same way because
Mhm.
where I mentioned the get in your face and drill instructor, like, who do you think you're talking to? Like you said, it can very much also be
And as a
like you
my
I'm whispering in your ear and scaring the crap out of you.
Yeah, and my personal play style when it comes to role playing as a DM is um I don't like to bring up roles too often during the role play itself. Only when it like really makes the character that I'm role playing as think. And if they like gotta make an actual choice, I'm like, okay, you need to roll for something. But before that, I usually just play into it. I keep going and have back and forth, and maybe things that would normally require a deception check. If my character like has no inclination to think you're lying, then I'm not even going to make you roll for a deception check. Or if I do, I'm going to make you roll for it once, prove it to me. You prove it to me. Now I'm never going to ask for it again.
Yeah, and like I said, a difference in styles again.
Yeah.
I am more likely to do the roles, but I think that's just got more to do with again my style of
Yeah.
um
I wouldn't bog it down too much though, because then it would become
yeah.
role playing like little snippets, and it could pull people out of a moment, you know.
Yeah, I think the night that we did it and you did a lot of those roles, it was a one-on-one session.
Yeah.
Like nobody else was there. So it didn't, to me at least, it was like it doesn't matter how many you can do this 800 times.
Mhm.
You know, it's just the two of us. If
Yeah.
we were playing somebody else, I would have been like probably two, maybe three at the most, and then like you better figure something out.
Mhm.
So but yeah, so that was But intimidation, deception, persuasion. I think everybody kind of knows what those are. Deception, you're lying. Persuasion, obviously you're trying to talk somebody into something.
I got a definition for persuasion, real good one.
Oh, go for it.
Says the act of persuading or seeking to persuade, the power of persuading, persuasive. Okay, this is just a bunch of ways to say persuasive. Well, I had something. Oh, here it is. Here it is. This is what I was like. When we think of persuasion, negative examples are often the first to come to mind, but persuasion can often be used as a positive force. Public service campaigns can urge people to recycle or quit smoking. That's a great example.
Yeah,
I like that
absolutely.
one.
Yeah, and I think let me see if they have some other ones. Here we go. You can use persuasion when acting in good faith, like you said, like trying to prove it. I know I've done this before. I'm like, are you lying or are you telling the truth? And then based on what you guys say, well, I'm lying. Okay, give me deception. You know, but here's some other ones. Foster friendships.
Foster
Make
friendships. You all what?
make
I never thought about that.
making cordial requests, or exhibit proper etiquette. I actually hadn't thought of any of those, to be honest. Um,
How often are we trying to exhibit proper etiquette in D&T?
yeah, well, that's why I
We
said
haven't
like
really
I
been
would.
put in a scenario where that's like essential.
Yeah, you're gonna have to you meet a king and all of a sudden it's like, you better roll for some charisma, for some persuasion. Um, but another thing they use, this is just a straight charisma check. So again, an ability check versus a skill check. For the charisma ability is finding the best person to talk to for news, rumors, or gossip. So that would be something you could do, like going to a tavern or stuff like
Yeah,
that.
usually when people say like, I want to seek for information or something like that, I want to look for information. A lot of times people go straight to perception
Or
for that.
investigation.
Yeah, or investigation. But charisma, if you're looking to seek out somebody, might be the better one to go for.
Yeah, and I think that one again, it can go either way. I think that's why I like the charisma checks, is because they're so flexible. Because you could do just a straight charisma check, or if you're at a bar, you could talk to the or inn or tavern or wherever, and you can talk to, the barmaid or the tavern owner, whoever it is, and like, hey man, I'm new in town. I'm looking for work. Do you know anybody I could talk to
New
for
in
work?
town.
I'm I'm new in town. Now I sound like doing the John Mulaney bit.
Yeah.
But no, but I mean it's a perfect example of like, hey, I'm looking for work. I'm looking for somebody. Maybe you heard about somebody on your travels. And no matter how good you roll, I mean, maybe that's just like a bad dude in town. And they're just like, oh, well, I don't know nothing about that. But just the fact that you spoke his name, maybe now that character knows you're in town and they come looking for you. So, it can be stuff like that. I think that's why, again, I like charisma. It's really flexible. You can do a lot with it. So for me, it's super fun. Charisma is also used for spell casting for bards, but paladins, sorcerers, and warlocks. So wizards use intelligence, or wisdom, depends on. I always get them all mixed up. But yeah, so like I said, I played a paladin, so obviously my charisma was real high. But I love charisma. I've said it 100 times, but it's super fun. And I think it's because I also do a lot of social interactions, because I'm not great at running combat. At least I don't feel like I am. So it's like, if we can talk this out, let's do that.
Yeah, I would say if you're a new player, maybe ask your DM like, how often, before I make my character, how often do you get into social encounters? If you're looking to go for that charisma build, maybe talk to the DM a little bit, because yeah, having a high charisma is really fun when especially if you're a social butterfly. But if you're going into a game where it's like going to be hardcore combat, and then you could still have charisma, because like Will said, there's several classes that uses that as its core bit, spellcasting component. But that DM might not be as willing to do like those fun social encounters of like, oh, I want to debate a witch.
Yeah. and that's again, communication.
Mhm.
I think that, I'm not going to harp on it. We do that every time, but like Matt said, it takes 2 seconds to ask that question.
Right.
And I think that's something that can also be established at a session 0. Like, hey, this is a dungeon crawl, so unless you're building a class that needs charisma for spellcasting or whatever,
Oh,
like,
I'm gonna give some advice to DMs.
uh-oh.
If any DMs are listening, listen up, DMs, peep them ears. So I think when it comes to charisma, you got to think about it when it comes to your story building and how much story you're willing to divulge. Because when people use intimidate or like a charm spell or something like that, or even persuasion to become friends with somebody, suddenly they're in a position where they can get lore from somebody, or at least information about your story from somebody. And you got to think about, okay, how much does this person know? Because your characters might hit them with the whole textbook. Who's the king? What kind of magic does he do? Like, like hit him with everything. And you unprepared might accidentally have this peasant know too much.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've dealt with, where suddenly they're like, well, how do you know that? And then I'm like, oh shit. Now I
Yeah.
gotta come up with something.
You got
And
like a charm person with a zone of truth, and now,
yeah,
hey
and
buddy, what's going on?
right, and you just give too much away because they're just constantly succeeding their performance checks or whatever. And yeah, so you just got to think about, like, sometimes when they do really well in these charisma checks, the person they're talking to is not the person they need to be talking to, so they could succeed in a charisma check, but not get quite the information they need because that's the wrong person.
Yeah. No, I think that's I think that goes back to in a way, I know we talked about it a while back, like, just because you get a nat 20 doesn't mean you succeed.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like it's cool that you rolled we'll go a nat 20 talking to this peasant about the king.
Mhm.
But I always you saying that just reminded me of like the Monty Python, like, he's the king. Well, I didn't vote for him. Like,
exactly.
like, I don't know anything about this guy. He just showed up one day and was like, I'm in charge. And like,
we're taking orders from ladies and legs.
yeah, right. Like, if she weighs the same as a duck, she's a witch. I don't know. Like, that would be a good charisma check. But but yeah, like, it's that idea of like, just because you're talking to someone doesn't mean they know anything.
And you might get yourself into some witch trials problems, especially if you're intimidating people to get information. You just might get the information you want, but it might not be right.
Yeah, like, yeah, it's just, yeah, no, that's a perfect example. You can intimidate nat 20, 19, 4, whatever it is, and it's just like, this
Scare
person's
the
just
crap out of this blacksmith.
Yeah, and he's just giving you information because he just wants you to go away.
Right. And like, I don't think that's wrong for the DM to do, to be like,
No.
just give them false information, even though they rolled very high. I don't think that's wrong for them to do, as long as the DM, like, afterwards or even before, says to the party, like, this is a town, like, maybe disconnected from the kingdom, kind of set those little tidbits of information to tell the party that you can only find so much here.
No,
Like,
yeah, and
this
is
is a blacksmith. We're going with blacksmith being scared and giving answers. This is a blacksmith, like, hard on his luck here. He's just trying to get by, doing his craft, and then suddenly party members come busting through his door and, like, intimidating him. Of course he's going to say anything to get you the hell out of this room.
Yeah. Well, and the same can go either, like you said, describe it like that, or the most common place they go to first is a tavern. You're talking to the guy working the bar, and he's like, you're like, hey, what's going on in the kingdom? Hey man, I don't know. The king doesn't really come down here and mess with us. We don't really,
Yeah.
none of us know what's going on.
Yeah.
You-
Those are
now,
great ways to give just the illusion that
yeah,
you'll only find so much here. You won't, not all the answers are here.
yeah, and I mean, and that's hopefully your players get the hint. I don't know how else to say that, but
If they don't, introduce an NPC that's maybe an out of towner that just like, these fools don't know anything. You gotta go that way.
or
That kind of thing.
one that I like to I haven't gotten a chance to use it, but in a similar situation, maybe somebody who escaped the jail. They're on the run. You're
It's
in jail.
very
You're
chaotic.
I am
He escaped
charisma.
jail.
Well, no, because in jail he's hearing things. He's hearing guards talk.
That's true. That's true.
They-
I would
they-
even say like maybe now we're just talking about encounters. Like I like that jail idea though. I do like the jail idea, but I was like thinking of it in the aspect of like you're in this town for a reason, trying to get information. Of course, you're gonna help them out with the problems, right? Maybe there's some bandits around. You capture some bandits and bring them to jail of this town, right? And in the jail, maybe there's somebody that recognizes you that is also an out of towner, and they're just like, hey, I remember you from the last town. And they're the only person with any context to the story right now. And so they know about like the king or whatever it's happening out there. They know about that. And you currently got them behind bars. They're ready for a questioning.
Or I'll give you the answers if you help me get out.
Yeah, you can go
Chaos!
chaotic again. You can go chaotic again if you want.
But yeah, and one thing that we actually didn't talk about when it comes to charisma, you touched on it for a second. Performance. I mean,
I have it up. I got the definition.
oh, go for it.
An act of staging or presenting a play, concert, or other form of entertainment. Don Giovanni had his first performance in 1787. 1987, Don Giovanni.
Setting up Pokemon for success. So, I was just watching a Pokemon video on my way home. So,
Okay.
I don't know. I got nothing. I'm getting tired. But yeah. So again, that one is specifically, I feel like, more for a bard. But if
Yeah.
you want to take it outside of that, what if I'm trying to create a distraction?
Yeah.
Hear ye, townspeople. Man, I need a performance check. Oh, you get a nat 20? Man, the whole town comes to hear what you've got to say.
You
And
better
that
have
one-
something good to say.
Right? But like
Fuck everybody up.
but the nat one will just be like someone throws a rotten tomato at you and tells you to shut up. Like like that old cartoon trope. Like, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't work. No one cares.
In performance, I think it says in the definition I read, or other form of an entertainment. And we brought this up in the last episode. Entertainment could be that's vague. So it could be like the Olympics. So you could do like strength stuff, but roll for performance. So like lifting weights. Yeah, that does require strength. But if you're like showing off, putting on a show, that's a performance.
Right. And without getting
now in perspective, I'm thinking about like, my strength build characters, they probably look real ugly if they're trying to put on a performance lifting muscles. They're probably like hardcore, like and you're like, oh, okay.
terrifying.
You're strong, I get it.
Well, and that also goes into, which it's not something we're going to get into tonight, but it's something I'm big on. I'm always looking for ways to introduce them, are skill challenges, which is a whole nother thing. They don't do a lot. There's not a lot of them in 5e. I think they were more like a 3.5 fourth edition thing. Without getting too into it though, for anybody who doesn't know, it's basically where you take 3 skills or like 2, like any combination of skills and abilities, and you roll, and the more successes you have, the better. The examples that are in the books, I think they're in the DMG and Xanathars for like downtime activities. It's got stuff like gambling, and it'll tell you roll these 3 things, and depending on how many successes you get, like that's how much money you make.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's other examples. There's like committing crime is actually one of them. It just says crime, which it's like super weird. But then there's also like research, like learning how to use new tools. There's all kind of crafting weapons or potions. There's all kinds of different things, and they make those skill challenges. I today recently put together some stuff that we may not even use, but it's super fun. And you mentioned the Olympics. It's essentially the Olympics that I
Yeah.
put together today. I think I told you guys in our group chat, like, you may not want to participate in any of the events. That's fine. But I have something that I can always, copy and paste for later in
Yeah.
another time, another game.
And I feel like using strength-based checks as performance. I'm sorry, using performance for strength things, not even base checks or strength check, just strength things, is very interchangeable. Like perhaps if you are trying to cater to just a fun time, you can say, yeah, you know what, just roll for strength instead. And whereas other people could be like, roll for performance and still do it. It's really kind of like just a role play and flavor you want to give to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then maybe at some point, I know I would like to, I don't know if you guys, I would like to do like a skill challenges episode, because they're not difficult to do, but they do take sometimes some planning depending on what you're trying to do. But that's for something for later. But yeah, man, I don't really have anything else to add. Matt, do you?
I don't think so.
Alrighty, guys. Well, I know we were a little chaotic per usual, but we hope you found some of this information useful. If you do still have questions or anything, leave a comment down below. We will definitely answer those questions. As always, you guys can follow us. We're on all social media, Game Masters Underdark. We have a Patreon, and we're working on a few other things. And once we have those put together, we'll let you know. But as always, we appreciate you listening, watching, and we will talk to you guys later. Happy gaming and have a great weekend. Bye.
Adios.